on, guys? Hello. I know you're all excited for this. I'm excited for this. Everybody's excited for this. It is the balance patch notes. So balance patch should be out October 4th, according to what they told us in the past. But yeah, obviously things are able to change like they have in the past, but let's go over it. I want to talk about things in phases. So to start with, let's talk about siege changes. So Carcano is getting a massive nerf. Thank everybody. Jesus. Oh my god, Carcano is nuts. Decreases the defense from 2 turns to 1 turn on passive now. I think this is a fair change. So the reason I think it's a fair change is because on his turn, he'll still do great damage. It's just not overpowering on the lasting effects of it. We'll be able to use more reasonable cleansers. We'll be able to possibly use no cleansers in some cases, depending on what the setup is. They didn't change his damage. They didn't change the defensive nature of stance. They just made it so that the defense break is not as ridiculously oppressive as it has been in the past. I like this change a lot. I think it's really good. Lulu's getting a nerf. So Lulu and Lala getting this nerf to their skill 2s. I think this is really fair. This is a really good RTA change as well, but I can go into that afterwards. So the reason I think it's fair for Siege right now is because if you are a high tier Siege player, you have 5 Lulus. You have 10 Lulus. Because Lulu is just the best. There is nothing better. There's no diversity in it. I think that by nerfing offenses while also simultaneously nerfing defenses, I think this will create a little bit more diversity in what people can build and what people will build. I still think Lulu will be really good for Siege offense, but I don't think people will feel necessarily as forced to have as many as they did before. Lala, as I mentioned, also getting a nerf. There's a couple teams at high end that were using Lala. Not a nerf. Not a nerf for skill 3. Just a skill 2 nerf. Basically, they're increasing the healing amount on skill 3, which is totally fine. I think it's a great addition. I think maybe they want people to shift into potentially using Lala more in comparison to just using Lulu, but we will have to see how that turns out overall. Huge nerfs for Siege. Onimushas are getting huge nerfs. So all of the Onimusha skill 1s deal 19% less damage. That is super significant. Super significant. Fuki will no longer be the insane menace that he was. I think he will still be pretty strong. Don't get me wrong. I think that even if they nerf his damage by 20%, I still think he'll output a ton of damage. Defense break is still really strong. His passive is still really strong. Kinky gets a little bit weaker in terms of damage. So does the Dark One Ongyoki. Now, keep in mind, this is only for Ghost Slash. This is only for Ghost Slash. That's only for their skill 1. It's not for their skill 2s. So their skill 2s actually still have the same strength. Fuki's passive is getting changed from 20% damage based on the lost HP to 15%. I think this is very fair. He is ridiculous. Fuki is absolutely busted. It heals for tons. It does a ton of damage. It has super good base stats. Incredible unit, right? Ongyoki, they have changed it. So critical hits when occur when attacking the enemy. Damage increased is being changed from 50% to 30%. I think that's also fine. This unit's a nat 5, so it has even better base stats than all the other ones. I think that reducing its damage by 20% as well is also pretty reasonable. Or nerfing its damage increase by 20% is totally fine. Bison, Fire Bison, Carnal. This is an RTA one, so I'll skip this and come back to it. I want to continue on with the Siege ones, or the things that I think will affect Siege. I honestly don't think Wind Mage and Water Mage will really affect Siege, but we can talk about Wind Mage. So Wind Mage, they basically changed the way the stacking works. So the passive before was 5% per stack at 100%. 100 times gives you 500%. Now, this only applied when you landed a critical hit. Now, what they're changing it to is you get 10% attack and defense up to 300%, so 30 stacks, whenever an ally attacks an enemy. So this unit can be slower, it can do a lot of damage. I don't think it's really going to make that much of a difference. This unit is kind of just okay. I might be entirely wrong, though. Momo might be, or not Momo, it's Coco? No, Coco's the fire one. I can never remember the names of the mages. The Wind Mage may be incredibly strong after this buff, but I personally don't think it's going to be that great, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. Fermion changes. I think Fermion has potential to be okay again on Siege offense. Maybe on Siege defense at not high level, not at G3, just because the Revenge after the defense break has the potential to do a lot of damage, but there are a lot of really good light tanks, so I'm not quite sure if it would be that great on defense. Other changes, Archangels. I don't think the skill 2 adding target defense buff is really that relevant because you don't really use Alad that much. You don't really use Aerial that much anymore. If you do, it's a lower tier offense. A lot of the time you'll just see Lulus. Unicorn changes. I don't think the unicorn changes make any difference for Siege. I don't think the Pioneer changes do anything for Siege. Dark Dragon might be used in some cases, but probably not for high level. Light Pioneer, maybe for your light tank it's okay, just because if you don't use your skill 3, you get 15% bonus damage mitigation for your allies, but again, doesn't seem super relevant. Sylphids, I don't think is relevant. Maybe if you're a Mahale user, some people use Mahale. I don't think it's that common in like really high level Siege, but the 1-turn immunity could be helpful from the skill 3. I think we have the potential to see the Wind Anubis come back. So after the revive, we do see the skill 2 pop out, which is a good amount of damage. It's a very strong unit. So and then it still gets its natural turn. So it might be enough to like catch people off guard and kill them. But otherwise, I'm not really seeing too much there for Siege defense setup. Now, I don't think anything else here is super relevant for Siege. I don't think the Sky Dancers are super relevant for Siege. However, what I am interested in is this change right here. So, okay, first of all, I mentioned Archangels. I don't think they're super relevant for Siege, but the 5-speed difference might make it enough for the Fermion. This is the thing I'm interested in for Siege. I think that Sky Dancers getting Guild Wars leads could have potential. I'm not sure if that's going to be an offensive thing or a defensive thing, but I would love to see some sort of Miang setups. I think 28% attack speed is pretty strong, and Miang herself has pretty good scalings and pretty good stats, but not sure. Not quite sure how I feel about that. I like the versatility of a water speed lead in this situation, especially in a 4-star tower, but I'm not sure how much threat it can actually like pose on defense. Let's go over the PvE stuff. I'm going to do RTA last just because I think everyone kind of wants to wait for that, and it's the biggest category. So PvE changes. The Howl changes are pretty bad for PvE. It's kind of shit if you're a PvE, like a newer player, for example, your units are nerfed. So I get it. I'm sorry we had to do it, but it has to be this way. Getting the extra defense buff can be helpful for like aerial and stuff. I don't think the unicorns are that useful for PvE. I also probably wouldn't say that the Pioneer changes are that great for PvE. Maybe the skill 2 from the light and the water one being 20% of your max HP heal instead of just a raw proportionate. I assume that it's more, otherwise they wouldn't change that. I think the light Sylphid is really good for PvE. So if you're someone who uses Mahale in TOA or TOA Hell or anything like that, it's great for you. Wind Anubis changes, really great for Tartarus, really great for potentially maybe your what's the word I'm looking for? Your Rift Dungeon teams and stuff like that. I think the Fire Sky Dancer is great for you because the defense break chance if you use her already. I think the Vampire, Water Vampire I think is great now. So you always land crits on fire monsters. You get a percent chance of defense break every single hit. It's 5 hits, and you do execute based damage. So the lower their HP is, the more damage you deal. Wind Vampire gets a buff, so it has a branding chance on skill 3 now. It's already a debuff scaling skill, so it does a lot of damage. I guess for the Dark Vampire, if you're using it for like... Some people use Cadiz in some of their speed teams. I don't think it's super relevant, but if you need that extra strip chance, it's pretty decent. If you're a Magic Knight user, early game Magic Knight user, these changes are pretty good. Increased defense break chance gives you a little bit more for your Lapis. It makes her a little bit stronger in the early game. And then for Dark Magical Archer, they've increased the chance for your skill 3 to ignore defense. So before it was 15% per harmful effect rate, now it's 20%. I think that those things are fine. I do kind of like the Valkyrie changes, but I don't feel like they're super relevant for most of PvE content. And then pretty much that's all. I guess if you use Archangels in PvE, 5 extra speed will never hurt you. The last thing I want to go over are RTA changes. I know this is what you all want to hear about. This is what most people come to this channel for. So RTA changes are going to be pretty significant this season. So skill 2 for Lulu is nerfed by 1-turn cooldown. I think this is fair, and the reason I think it's fair is because Lulu's skill 2 heals a ton. It heals Lulu and it heals the ally, or if you use it on Lulu herself, it doubles the heal basically. I think that's way too much on a 2-turn cooldown. It's also a single target cleanse. I think that the first turn for Lulu is still incredibly strong though, because you can either immunity yourself and have to make the choice of taking the longer cooldown now, or you can cleanse your whole team immediately, which is very effective and very strong. So basically, first turn Lulu doesn't change, but the turns consecutively after are worse. Now, I think this is a really good way of nerfing units. I like that they did that with Gianna. Gianna got a cooldown reduction on skill 3, or a cooldown increase, sorry, on skill 3. It doesn't change her turn 1, but it still makes her a little bit weaker, because if the rotation isn't perfect, or she doesn't get a proc, or you don't CC the enemy, or you get unlucky with the resist, then it's not as easy to continuously lock down people, right? With Lulu, it's just this excessive amount of healing. Lulu already heals every single turn. You heal on skill 1 as well. So I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to balance out the amount of burst healing you can deal every 3rd or 5th turn, right? I think these are great. I think overall the changes are great. I actually really like that they're nerfing Onimushas. I know Onimushas are really good answers to Ragdoll. They're really good into Leo. They're really good into Tianlang, etc. But I think that these units really need nerfs. They're incredibly strong. They deal way too much damage. They are super hard to kill. You know, the Dark and Fire on Onimusha have like Speed Awakens. They're super busted units that I think totally needed some sort of reduction of damage. And I'm happy that they didn't make their defense break worse, or they didn't make their passives garbage, like by removing them or anything. They basically just removed a raw amount of damage that these units deal, and I think that's fine. It's totally fine. Bison and Slayer, I don't think they targeted it in the correct way. I think that it's okay what they changed, though. The skill 3 now it reduces 15% attack bar instead of 30. I really would have liked to see us change to skill 2, just because I think that skill 2 change is the stronger mechanic for Bison. I think the turn rotation and the pushback is really good, but maybe with the 15% attack bar reduction instead of 30, it's just enough in the nerf to make it more reasonable. Maybe they wanted to make sure that Bison still had that strength without being too overpowered compared to like Lulu's nerf. Obviously Lulu's the biggest counter in this situation. So I'm open to seeing how it works. I think it's not what I wanted, but that doesn't mean that it's not good. Valkyrie changes. I really like this change. Chroma's passive. The chance of allies receiving critical hit reduced by from 30% to 15%. I think this is great. Chroma already has an incredibly good HP lead. The unit does a lot of damage right now. In the meta, it's very popular because of all of the CC out there. I think it's fine to reduce the amount of crit, right? With crit changes to the game already where we lost that bonus crit that was bugged, I think that 15, maybe 20% would have been better. I think maybe taking away a whole 15 was a little bit too much. But I'm interested to see if this balances her a little bit more and she's still strong enough to be used. I do like that Sword of Promises increase the enemy's skill cooldown turn by 20% chance. I believe that goes up to 30% chance with skill ups, but I'm not 100% sure. I think that does give a little bit more strength to actually, wait, it's on skill 1. Sword of Promises skill 1. So I think that's actually okay. A Chroma getting like a 20% chance to like randomly like reduce or increase your cooldown on skill 1 is not the worst. I mean, you get these dead turns between your skill 2, but you kill with skill 1, you get in skill 2 for the damage, or you just skill 1, deal damage, and now you can cooldown reset people. I think it's a good trade-off. I'm interested to see how it works. It might be a really frustrating mechanic because you're going to like pray for it, or you're just going to be like, man, it's only a 25% chance to hit, and it hit me, but I'm willing to give it a try. It's another one of those situations where I really want to give it a try. I don't really want to cover Fire or Dark Valkyrie. I don't think either of them are useful for this content. Water Mage. I think Water Mage is super cool. The one Soulstone when the battle begins basically gives you like a Vanessa passive right off the bat, which I think is really cool. I think it's another answer potentially to this like Molong, Daphnis, Diana snipe meta that's out there, but we'll see if anyone actually decides to use the Water Mage. If I had one, I'd build it and test it for you guys, but sadly I do not. So we'll have to see how things go. I think Veladrul has potential now. This defense break added to the skill 2, I'm not sure is what makes him notably better for the meta, but the 5 base speed I think is really strong. I think 5 base speed is really strong. Light Archangel getting a defense buff on his own heal I think is really strong though. I think it's really cool that so he gets defense buff and he does more damage in this situation. So now Artemis a little bit better as a standalone unit, even though the meta is not very crit focused and Onimusha still exists. I think this does give him the potential to be a little bit scarier. I really like the change to skill 2 pony form for Amelia and Eleanor though. I really like that they changed the provoke from 1 turns to 2 turns. I think that's really good. And it gives them the opportunity to rotate back into human form should they wish or if they need to. I like the change to the lights passive here. I like that it's instead of yourself having minus 50 crit chance, and now it's everybody has minus 15% critical hit applying to them. Sorry, receiving a critical hit. I think that's great. I think the dark pony is really great. I like that it's 20% received damage to everybody instead of just 30% back to the person who attacked you. Makes her a lot more of a threat in sort of like cleaves or just AoE situations. Could make her a lot stronger with like just a couple healers or maybe just like with a Samoth for that final damage. I do kind of like that they buffed the skill 2 on Pongbek, Chiwu, and Woonsa. I don't really like that Woonsa got it, but at the end of the day, it's not the worst. 13% increased damage could be really nice, especially for those people who rely on it for crit damage. Could be enough to kill Junos, etc., etc. Continuing on for RTA-related stuff. Dark Sky Dancer. I've always wanted her. I've always wanted a Wooyoung. They increase the attack bar gain from 15% to 20% if your allies are full HP. I think that's great. Super, super great change. And then Light and Dark Vamp. So if you're a Dark Vamp user, you're using it for the strip to control Lulu, kind of like a more premium version of a Lauren. I think it's nice because the strip chance went up a little bit. And then Immortality passive on Light Vampire on Julian, I think is really cool. If this reads the way I think it does, I think it's really strong. So it removes all harmful effects granted on yourself at the moment of death. I don't know if that's like a cooldown thing. So it's like... So it says it's part of the passive, right? So Oblivion doesn't matter. Oblivion still ignores all of this. But essentially the way I'm reading it is when you steal HP from your allies because you're passive procced, you cleanse yourself, which means you take off speed down, you take off slow debuff, you take off dots, you take off attack break, everything. And I think that that's really strong, and I think it's going to be really good. I know he's more of a single target unit, single hit. Like he only hits twice on both skills, so kind of okay on additional damage. But I think that with this cleanse, like the self-cleansing mechanic, I think he has a lot of potential to be really strong. So last couple things to go over. Dark Valkyrie 15 crit instead of the resist, finally a good change. Sekhmet now has 115 or 114 base speed. I'm excited to use Sekhmet. That's a 290 violent build. That is a 325, 330 speed swift build. This unit can now contend Woundsaw. This unit can contend Triton. This unit can now set up with Oki and Gani to move ahead of units for strips. I'm really excited to see Sekhmet. You will most definitely see me building her. I look forward to rolling some noobs with it. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Or getting absolutely rolled. That also happens fairly often. And then this last change I think is a little interesting. I'm not quite sure how this is actually going to work right now, but essentially the Fire Epicyon Priest, Chloe, also great SWC win from Fame Memory there, is now getting a 20% attack speed lead in the arena instead of having the 27% defense lead. So that has potential to be really cool. Has potential to shake things up. I think it's nice to see more of these like 20 to 28 speed or 20 to 28% speed leads. Just giving a little more variety in there between like Sierra and so a lot of people just use Sierra, Water Ryu, Samoth, Chiwu, and then it's like Fran is your next speed lead, right? Having these options can be really strong, especially a unit that provides immunity. So overall, I think the patch, I'm going to give the patch, from a siege perspective, I'm going to give the patch a 9 out of 10 because I think the Carcano nerf and the Fuki nerf is significant enough to make the game more fun. The only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because I think defense is still going to be really weak again. So it's going to be tough. I think more people will be happy because they'll get better offense rates, but I think that building defense is going to be more frustrating again. Actually, I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. 8.5 out of 10. For PvE changes, I'm going to give this a 8. I think if the nerfs didn't come to Lulu and Lala so significantly and to the strength of the Oni Mushas for PvE content, I would give it a 9. But I give it an 8. It's not bad. For RTA, I think this is actually, I'm going to give it a 9. I'm going to give it a 9.25. And the reason I'm going to give it a 9.25 and not a 9.5 is because I feel like the thing that I want them to address the most is additional damage. But they did approach a lot of nerfs to units in a way that I deem very appropriate. So when I say appropriate nerfs, I mean these units' first turns are still very good and very strong. And their subsequent turns are a little bit weaker. And I think that that is the way that I prefer the approach of nerfing. I also like that they decrease the damage output of the Onimushas. So essentially, instead of having a really, really strong, like, we're just going to take away your defense break, we're going to take away your bonus damage from HP. They're like, oh, we're just going to nerf it a little bit because it's too much right now. And that is totally the way that I think it should be. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more buffs on some light and dark units that are completely unusable right now. Would have liked to see some things get buffs so that they can have like a place. You know, not every unit needs to be amazing in RTA, but having every unit have some availability in the game is kind of what I'm searching for. Obviously, I still have no LDNAF 5, so I don't have to complain as hard as other people. But I really do hope that, you know, more balance comes to the game. I'm looking forward to seeing how they adjust balance patches, doing every 2 months instead of longer. I'd be interested to see if they do like a TikTok cycle where they have a really big patch like this, and then a smaller patch where they work on like damage scalings, or like, you know, these units are a little bit offside, you know, we can give them a little bit more healing or a little bit more shields or a little bit more damage. So overall, I think this is a good approach into finishing out the SWC season this year, as well as a great way to finish out 2021. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I know you guys have all watched a million of these balance patch videos, but I really do feel like I try to bring something a little different. If you haven't checked it out already, I did do a top 5 underrated units with Childish on his channel. I'll link it below there. But thank you guys for being here. Thank you for supporting me through this year. I will not be here next week. I'm in New York with Childish and a bunch of other people for New York Comic Con, as well as the New York meetup. If you're coming by, please say hi. Let me know. We can take a picture and hang out. Have a good time. Other than that, though, I will be trying to get like 3 or 4 videos uploaded to YouTube and then getting a vlog when I get back. So thank you so much for being here, guys. I appreciate watching. Thank you for everything, and I will see you soon.